Welcome to this lecture on evolutionary biology. Today, we are going to explore one of the most fundamental and fascinating questions in all of science. What exactly makes a species a species? It might sound like a simple question, but as we will see, the answer holds the key to understanding how life evolves, how ecosystems function, and how we can protect the incredible biodiversity of our planet. Let us dive in. To begin, I want you to imagine that you are given a massive box of mixed Lego pieces and asked to sort them into meaningful piles. You might choose to sort them by color, by size, or by the specific structures they can build. In nature, biologists face a very similar problem when looking at the overwhelming variety of living creatures on Earth. We need a reliable way to organize them into distinct groups so we can study how they live and evolve. Just like you need a specific rule to sort your Legos, biologists need a specific set of rules to decide if two animals belong to the same group. This fundamental unit of sorting is what we call a species. Now that we understand the need for a sorting rule, let us look at the most widely accepted framework in evolutionary biology, the biological species concept. Originally proposed by the famous evolutionary biologist Ernst Mayr, this concept provides a clear, testable definition. According to Mayr, a species is a group of actually or potentially interbreeding natural populations that are reproductively isolated from other such groups. But what does this highly technical definition mean in everyday practice? The key word here is interbreeding. It means that individuals within the group can mate and produce healthy, fertile offspring. If they can do that, they belong to the same species. This brings us to the second half of Mayer's definition, which is just as important. What does it mean to be reproductively isolated? It means that organisms cannot successfully mate with individuals from outside their specific group to produce fertile young. Let us look at a classic example. A horse mating with another horse produces a healthy, fertile foal. However, if a horse mates with a donkey, they produce a mule. While the mule is alive and healthy, it is completely sterile. It cannot have babies of its own. Because the offspring is sterile, the genetic line stops there. This reproductive dead end proves that horses and donkeys remain separate, distinct species. You might wonder why we spend so much time and energy arguing over how to define a simple word like species. The truth is, defining species accurately is absolutely critical for almost everything we do in biology, conservation, and medicine. If we do not know exactly what a species is, we cannot pass effective laws to protect endangered animals because we would not know what biological entity we are trying to save. In medicine, knowing the exact species of a mosquito helps us understand if it carries deadly diseases like malaria, which directly saves human lives. Furthermore, the species is the only taxonomic category that actually exists as a real, interacting biological entity in nature, making it the absolute foundation for studying evolution. Now that we know why the species concept is so important, we face a practical challenge. To understand if two populations are actually the same species, or if they are splitting apart, we cannot just look at them. Visual observation is often not enough. Instead, we must measure their genetics. By looking at the frequencies of different genes, we can calculate exactly how much gene flow, or interbreeding, is happening between the groups. If the groups are sharing genes freely, they are the same species. But if they are not sharing genes, they are on their way to becoming separate species. To measure this precisely, we need a mathematical tool. This brings us to the mathematical representation of species isolation. We use a powerful tool called Wright's Fixation Index, denoted as FST. Conceptually, this formula compares the genetic diversity of an entire combined population to the genetic diversity found within smaller, isolated subpopulations. Let us look at the symbols. FST is the fixation index itself, which is a ratio measuring the genetic difference between populations. HT represents the expected heterozygosity, or total genetic variation, of the entire combined population, as if they were all one big group. HS represents the average expected heterozygosity within the separate, isolated subpopulations. When HS decreases compared to HT, the value of FST increases, indicating that the populations are becoming more genetically isolated from one another. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. Imagine we have two populations of frogs that have recently been separated by a newly built, massive concrete highway. We want to know if they are becoming isolated enough to eventually be considered different species. We measure their genetics and find that the total genetic variation for both groups combined, HT, is 0.50. The average genetic variation within the individual groups, HS, is 0.40. We plug these values into our fixation index formula. 0.50 minus 0.40 gives us a numerator of 0.10. Dividing this by 0.50 gives us a final FST value of 0.20. This high value means the highway is severely restricting their ability to interbreed, pushing them toward becoming separate species. Now that we have used this formula, let us understand exactly why it works by breaking down its mathematical reasoning. What is this formula actually doing behind the scenes? Let us look at the numerator first. HT minus HS. HT represents the theoretical genetic diversity if all the frogs were freely mixing without any highway in the way. HS represents the actual diversity we see within the restricted, separated groups. By subtracting HS from HT, we are mathematically isolating the exact amount of genetic variation that is strictly due to the populations being separated. This subtraction step is crucial because it shows us exactly how much genetic diversity is locked away in the separate populations, rather than being shared across the whole group. This brings us to the final step of our derivation. Why do we divide that difference by HT? We do this to create a standardized ratio, or proportion. By dividing the locked-away diversity by the total possible diversity, we get a number between 0 and 1. Let us think about the extremes. If the populations are freely interbreeding and share all their genes, HS will perfectly equal HT. The numerator becomes 0, meaning FST is 0. They are the same species. On the other hand, if they share absolutely no genes and are completely isolated, HS drops to 0. The formula becomes HT divided by HT, which equals 1. So as FST approaches 1, it mathematically proves the populations have become completely separate species. So we have proven how to measure isolation. This brings us to the forces that actually cause it. For two populations to become separate species, the evolutionary force pulling them apart must be stronger than the force keeping them together. We represent this with a simple but powerful mathematical inequality. S is greater than M. Here, the symbol S represents the selection coefficient. This is the evolutionary pressure from the environment making the two populations different from one another. The symbol M represents the migration rate, which is the proportion of individuals moving between populations and mixing their genes back together. If S increases, divergence wins. If M increases, the populations blend back together. Speciation only happens when selection is strictly greater than migration. Let us apply this inequality to a specific scenario to see which evolutionary force is dominating. We're given a selection coefficient against hybrid offspring, S, equal to 0.15. We are also given a migration rate between the populations, M, equal to 0.05. We need to determine if these populations will successfully diverge into separate species. We set up our inequality, S is greater than M, and substitute our values. We get 0.15 is greater than 0.05. Since this mathematical condition is fully satisfied, it means natural selection is acting 3 times stronger than the gene flow between the groups. Because the environment is pulling them apart much faster than migration can mix them back together, these two populations will eventually become distinct biological species. To visualize everything we have discussed, let us look at this diagram showing the process of allopatric speciation. On the far left, you see a single, unified population of green insects. At this stage, there is high gene flow. They are freely interbreeding, so they remain one single species. Moving to the center, a physical barrier appears, in this case, a blue river. This river physically separates the population into 2 isolated groups, cutting off the migration rate we just calculated. Finally, on the right, you see the evolutionary outcome. Because they are separated, natural selection acts differently on each group. Over time, the top group has evolved into blue insects and the bottom group into yellow insects. They are now reproductively isolated, meaning even if the river dried up, they could no longer interbreed. They have become separate species. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us summarize our key takeaways. First, we learned that the biological species concept relies heavily on reproductive isolation. A true species is a group that only successfully mates and produces fertile offspring with its own kind. Second, we saw that we can measure this isolation mathematically using Wright's fixation index, which tells us exactly how genetically distinct populations have become. Third, we learned that for speciation to occur, the forces of natural selection must overpower the forces of gene flow. You have now mastered the fundamental rules of how biodiversity is organized. Understanding this concept is the absolute foundation for studying how new life forms evolve and how we can effectively protect them in the real world.